Welcome back to Dude We Can Build It. Today we are framing the interior walls of the house. We're adding 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a laundry room. The living room kitchen area will stay open and the ceiling will be exposed trusses. We're going to come back later and add spray foam and then paint it all black for a modern industrial look. So we're ready to start putting walls up inside the building, and the first thing that we need to do is start laying out our walls so that we can assemble them on the ground and then stand them up into place. So I'll get 2 boards of the same length, 1 treated base plate and a non-treated top plate. I'll make sure that the ends are nice and flush, and then I'll go ahead and start marking out our stud locations. To begin, if this is an end wall, I'm going to mark at 1.5 inches. This is going to be our very first stud, and then I'm going to proceed marking every 16 inches all the way down the length of the board. Now that we have our mark at every 16 inches, I'm going to use a square to transcribe this mark across both boards at the same locations. Next, I'm going to indicate which side of the line the studs are going to be on. So this very first stud is the only one that's going to be on the left-hand side of the line. After that, we're going to mark our stud locations to the right. Now, if we measure from the center of this stud location to the center of this stud location, you can see that we have a perfect 16 inches. If you wanted to, you could also come here and you could mark at 1.5 inches. Transcribe that line and you'll have both sides of your stud clearly marked. However, I don't normally do this because it takes extra time. If you have one line and you know which side the stud is going on, that's all the information that you need. Now, let's say that this wall is starting in a corner, and so it's going to have another wall come out of it. We're going to need to put a California corner right here, or an energy efficient corner that will take the place of the dead wood and also give that other wall something to attach to. To do this, we simply measure 5 inches from the end of the board, then we measure 1.5 inches in, and we draw our line across. This is our dead wood stud location. Now, anything that you mark on the base plate, you need to mirror it on the top plate. If it's on the outside here, it needs to come to the outside here. And also if it's on the inside, then it needs to come to the inside. So we'll do the same procedure here. We'll mark 5 inches, then we'll mark 1.5 inches, and we'll place our adjoining stud here. So when we flip these together in a clamshell action, all of our stud locations will match up. So now I'm going to show you how to do a rough frame in for a door. Let's say that we want to place a door right here and we have all of our stud locations. We can go ahead and measure out our 1.5 inches and find the other side of this stud here, and then we'll butt up a jack stud right next to this. Now, what a jack stud is a stud, but it's not full length. Say if we have a 36-inch by 80-inch door, then our rough opening needs to be 2 inches wider, which is 38 inches, and 2.5 inches taller, so that'll be 82.5 inches. So our jack stud, which is going right here, will be 82.5 inches. And then we can set the 2x6 top plate on top of that on both sides. So once again, we'll measure our 1.5 inches. And now we have a stud and we have our jack stud adjacent to it. Now let's say we're installing a 36-inch door. We need to start from the outside of this jack stud. We need to go 36 plus 2 inches to make our rough opening. That'll be 38 inches. So this will be the inside of the door. Now we'll measure 1.5 inches for our jack stud and 3 inches for our full length stud. At this point, our layout for our top and bottom plate is complete. We will be cutting out only the bottom plate because you're not going to have a bottom plate underneath your door. So let's cut this section out and then we can assemble this wall and set it in place. So here's our doorway that we framed up on the ground. We stood this wall up, got it anchored on both sides and anchored into the concrete with our expanded concrete anchors. We have our jack studs that were in place on the two sides that are 82.5 inches tall. So we went ahead and put our 2x6 header in. This keeps any load from the top plate from pushing down on this and pushing down on the door frame. This will bear the weight. This is a 2x6 flush on the front and a 2x6 flush on the back. There's a little gap in the middle. The only thing that we have left to do on this doorway is maintain our 16-inch spacing. So here, and then probably another one here. We need to put some little short cripples in, which is just a piece of stud cut to this height, set in here and right there. And this doorway will be complete. Once you have all your wall sections up, then you need to start installing your double top plate. And that's what locks in the top of all your walls together. You can see that our first top plate has a joint right here. And then our second top plate extends 2 foot past it so that it can be attached on both sides and bridge this joint. You want to make sure you have at least a 2 foot overlap on all the joints on your walls. Some jurisdictions might call for a different measurement, such as 4 foot. So check with your local building code on that. Also, when you have a perpendicular wall, you need to make sure that this perpendicular wall's second top plate goes over your other wall. That way it can be attached securely at the top and then anchor it also at the bottom. So at this point, we have installed our ceiling joists, which are these 2x8s here to span this 15-foot room. The 2x6s were used to span all of the 12-foot rooms. However, this 15-foot room is too far to use 2x6s at a 16-inch center, so we use 2x8s. Now, when we set our ceiling joists in place, we actually went ahead and set our rim joists first. So we put this up here and we toe-nailed it into the top plate, and we put our marks at our 16-inch on centers. That way we knew where to put these ceiling joists. Then once we set these ceiling joists in, we always use a square set on the top plate to make sure that these ceiling joists are actually square and not kicked out one way or the other. Another important note on installing ceiling joists is you always want to make sure that the crown of the board is facing up. That way when you put a load on it, it flattens out. If you put the crown facing down, you're going to have a dip in your ceiling. You don't want that. The last thing to do with our ceiling joists is we're going to place some strong backs going this direction about halfway down, and that will keep these ceiling joists from flexing one way to another. It'll also keep the spacing correct from one ceiling joist to another. That will make this entire ceiling assembly much stronger and straighter and keep the spacing uniform. So we're going to build a strong back so that you can see how this process works, and then we're going to set it on top of the ceiling joist and install it. So we have two 10-foot boards. We're going to overlap them in an L shape, and we're going to start screwing it down at one end. Make sure that the ends are flush and make sure that the sides are flush. We'll start with one screw down there. And then as my helper moves this way and screws in these other screws, I can move this board left and right to make sure that it's flush. So this is our strong back that we have just built. We're going to set it up on top of the ceiling joist over there, and we're going to make sure that the taller side is facing up. So what you can do to prepare to install this is you can actually mark out where your ceiling joist should be laying out. Our ceiling joists are on 16-inch centers, so we will go ahead and mark every 16 inches and place an X where the ceiling joist should go. That way when we install this, our ceiling joist will actually get spaced correctly. So the way that we framed our windows in is a little bit unorthodox. Since we have 2.5-inch tubular framing for this building, and I butted up the windows to the exterior of the wall with 2x4s, you can see here that our framed up interior wall and these cripples leave about 2¼ inches from the framing of the window itself. So this window is actually inset farther than our finished wall. So we simply framed out this wall and left a couple of blanks where these studs should have been. We stood it up, and then we took these studs and we just sandwiched it up against the framing for the window on both sides. Then we screwed it in, and then we measured and cut our cripples for the top and the bottom, got them attached to the window sill here and to the top of the window frame here. We're going to come back and rip some 2x4s down to the correct size to finish framing in this window later, but that is how we did our rough in for these windows. If you enjoyed this video and learned a few things, please let us know in the comment section below, and make sure to smash that like button. Next up, we're installing the electrical, so check it out.